heard you give that argument before about the T community, but I think that they're mentally ill, and so I understand why you banned that for them.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So
You're wrong. So I have a question. What did you go to school for if you went to school?
I have a master's of social work. I'm a licensed therapist.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
isn't that crazy, right? I diagnose it all the time.
Uh, okay. Well, you as a licensed therapist, a social worker that apparently makes these diagnoses, can you point me towards a single reputable institution of medicine or science that agrees with your claim that being that we cannot say because of TikTok TOS, is a mental
Right.
illness?
Right. So if you actually look in the DSM, the diagnostic manual for literally all psychologists, everything down the board, mental health, it literally has in the diagnosis a gender dysphoria, which
Oh.
is a part of that.
Did you know that gender
Uh,
dysphoria is not the same thing as being trans? So, in the same way
hmm.
that a fever can be a common byproduct or symptom of an illness, right? The fever is not synonymous to the illness. And in the same way, although many trans individuals can experience gender dysphoria, it is not the case that gender dysphoria is equivalent to that of being trans, but rather a common byproduct of having a disalignment of your gender identity and phenotypical sex traits. In fact, the American Psychiatric Association, which creates the DSM, is explicit about how being trans is not an ML, which we're going to use for mental illness because I need to make my words obfuscated so I don't get banned. In fact, that is the consensus amongst institutions of medicine and science across the world. For instance, the World Health Organization, the American Psychiatric Association, once again, the American Medical Association, the Endocrine Society, the British Psychological Society, the Royal College of Psychiatrics, the Canadian Psychological Association, the Australian Psychological Society, the European Society for Sexual Medicine, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Counseling Association, and the American Public Health Association all say that BNT is not a mental illness. Additionally, I think that in many scenarios, mental illness can be a red flag for wanting to do deeper background checks on an individual if they want to buy a gun, right? However, because the mental illness of gender dysphoria does not predispose individuals towards higher levels of gun violence, I don't think it is fair for you to say that trans individuals with gender dysphoria shouldn't be allowed to buy a gun. In fact, we see that trans individuals are less likely to engage in mass shootings than cis individuals. In the last 4.5 years in this country, there's been over 4,000 mass shootings. Four of them were caused by trans individuals, and the remainder were caused by cis individuals. In fact, although trans individuals only account for 1% of the population, they're even less likely, disproportionate to their representation of the populace, to commit a mass shooting.
Okay. I guess I'm a little confused on your debate of a trans person is not the same as gender dysphoria. Why is that? What is a trans person? Well, T person, sorry. Oh my gosh. T person. What would be how is that not gender dysphoria?
Because being trans is possessing a incongruence between your gender identity and phenotypical sex traits, and gender dysphoria is a sense of dysphoria between your gender identity and most typically like your phenotypical sex traits. However, this dysphoria doesn't exist in all trans people in all circumstances. It is just a common byproduct of being trans, but they're just not one and the same.
Okay, I think that's where we're definitely going to disagree. Is that I think that a T person is does have gender dysphoria. Most people
But
that
so many teen individuals do have gender dysphoria, right? And in
right,
fact, that would be
all of them do.
expected because if you have an incongruence between your gender identity and phenotypical sex traits, okay, it is common to experience a sense of dysphoria because of that. However, this doesn't mean that being trans is synonymous with gender dysphoria, and it also doesn't mean that all T people have gender dysphoria. But I think that we have to end this conversation very soon because I don't want my life to get taken down. But I just want you to know that I wish I could continue this conversation and continue to give the facts. And I'm very disheartened by the fact that TikTok will not allow me to do that.
Yeah, no worries. Well, if you want to, I mean, I support them. I mean, yes, the Second Amendment. You said that Trump took away that right. I think the Democratic Party takes away a lot more rights for gun owners. Yes, Kamala, she
Kamala.
was talking about, yeah, she was talking about, in the beginning banning what assault rifles, but then took it back or something of that sort. They were talking about mandatory buybacks, whatever. She took it back. She stepped back from it a little bit, and that's cool. But they're still wanting to take away certain firearms from people, and I just don't really agree with that. If you are a mentally sane person, I believe you should be able to carry a gun however you would like.
Would you say that if you grape somebody, you're not a mentally sane person?
Grape? As are you talking about like Trump and sexual assault
That's crazy. That the
allegations? What are you
very
talking
first
about?
person you associate with rape is the president. That is
Because I
insane. That
yeah, that's because I
oh,
knew
that's
exactly
insane.
where you were
Oh,
going
that's
with it, Dean.
crazy.
I knew
That's
I knew exactly
crazy.
I knew
Oh my
exactly where you were
god.
going to go
Okay,
with it. That's why.
whoa, dude,
I'm just
that's
skipping
that's
where your
nuts.
point was
Can you
going.
answer my question? Would you say that like if you like grape and SA people, you're obviously not mentally sane?
So when it comes to that, you're talking about like, okay, if you committed a crime, et cetera, should you own a gun? If you sexually assaulted somebody, raped
That's
somebody,
not what I asked you. That's not what I asked you. All that I'm asking you, it's simple, Miss Therapist,
I
is
don't I
if
don't
you
think it's
grape
a
or SA people, are you mentally sane? I would say no.
let's say if you in the United States, if you have a felony, you cannot own a firearm.
That's not what I
If it is
asked. That's I'm cutting
right,
you off because that's not what I asked. It is crazy that you're so quick to jump to your conviction about T individuals not being sane, but then as soon as it comes to literal rapists, all of a sudden you can't answer the question straight.
okay,
That
let
is
me
so
ask you this.
that is so like that is just so obviously a bold-faced, clear example of bigotry and hate, and I hope that everyone can see it. You know, like even if you're watching this live and you like and you're on the right, you don't think that like the gender identity of T individuals is valid. You like I think everyone with like common sense could listen to this guest here say with bold conviction that you are not sane if you're T, but then fail to answer the question if you're not sane if you're literally a serial rapist as anything but obvious
Okay,
hate and bigotry. So once again, I'm going to go
let
ahead
me
and re-ask you the
clarify.
question very clearly. I want to clarify on it. Can we agree that if you're graping people, if you're SAing people, you're obviously not mentally sane?
Okay, let me walk it back because when you said grape, I had no idea. I thought you were talking about like groping somebody, like sexual assault or something
Just
or what. But when you say grape,
RIP.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. So if somebody does that, then absolutely, yeah, they're mentally insane and they're committed a crime that they should never be able to carry a gun.
Okay. Well, a
Absolutely.
court determined that Donald Trump was guilty of grape. So you're telling me that Donald Trump shouldn't be able to own a gun, but he should be able to be president and have access to the nuclear codes?
Did he actually get? Did he? Because everything that I've seen, I didn't see court orders or court things that he actually was charged with anything of that sort. There were allegations for it.
Oh, don't worry. You haven't seen them? Well, now you're going to see them. Right. Give me a second. Now, so here's going to be the jury verdict form from the unanimous jury of 9 in the civil court case, Trump v. E. Jean Carroll. Obviously, I'm going to have some explaining to do. I'm going to ask you to take a look at question number 1 and question number 2. The unanimous 9 jurors agreed to this. So, firstly, the unanimous jury of 9 agreed that Donald Trump did not grape E. Jean Carroll, which would be question number 1. And then, secondly, the unanimous jury of 9 agreed that Donald Trump did sexually abuse E. Jean Carroll. So let's talk about the act that they all found him guilty of for question number 2, which would be sexual abuse, which was him taking his fingers and was forcefully penetrating E. Jean Carroll's female member unconsensually, right? And the reason why they selected no on question number 1, asking about grape, was because at the time, the state of New York defined grape as the penetration of the female member with a male member. And if it wasn't the penetration of the female member with a male member, such as penetration of the female member with fingers, it wasn't grape in the state of New York. Can we agree that under both of our definitions of grape, it is grape to forcefully insert your fingers into a woman's female member unconsensually?
I believe when you have grape, technically, legally standing, that is penis into vagina.
Okay,
But
you're wrong.
I do
34 states,
agree.
including New York, disagree. They revised and redefined to include what is considered like digital grape, which would be grape using your digits or fingers. So, legally speaking, you're wrong. But also, we shouldn't define grape based upon what the law says. We should define it colloquially, and hopefully, our colloquial interpretations of what grape means informs what the law should be.
Okay, so I think we're getting off the topic of okay, so we can
Nope.
say that Donald Trump was a, yeah, he could have sexually assaulted somebody. If he was convicted of a felony, then yes, he shouldn't own a firearm. But my nervousness of the Democratic Party is when they want to take
I'm
people's
sorry.
guns away.
We're not done with this yet. So now I'm just clarifying that you do accept that Donald Trump was found guilty of grape.
uh, I saw on the forum number two where it says that he sexually abused somebody. If he says the yes to that, or if he admitted to that, or if he was found of that, then yes, he sexually abused somebody. Sexual abuse. I mean, I'm not going to say yes or no. He raped somebody. I
Okay,
don't know.
so
I
this
don't
is
know if
why
I
we
agree
need a
with
little bit
that.
further dialogue. Can we agree that grape would include the penetration of forcefully and unconsensually of a woman's female member with a man's fingers? Can we agree?
Dude, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Show me where it says that in law, where it says if it's somebody's fingers. I mean, it's like such a specific little word here of like the fingers versus somebody's penis, because I'm pretty sure you can't a woman can't like rape another woman. It's
What?
just called sexual assault. It's just called sexual assault.
Um, you
Can you
don't.
look that
Wait,
up?
wait.
Look,
So,
look up the definition
so you
of
don't think that
rape.
grape occurs in women's prisons?
No, I think that if a man were to do that to a woman, I'm trying to look up the act
Wait,
like
so
look up the
you said that you're a social worker, right?
absolutely.
So if a
But
little
the
girl,
definition
so
the definition of
if a little girl came to you and she said she was raped by one of her teachers in school that was a woman, right? You would tell her that she wasn't.
oh, absolutely. I would not go and tell her, "Hey, that's not true. You weren't this." I would obviously that's a horrible thing for her to
But
be
you would
touched
think that it
sexually
was
by another
untrue.
woman.
But you, if she told you that she was raped in your head, you would say that's not true.
I'm so you're look up the definition of grape of what that is. Let's just say for,
I think that you're
Florida,
confusing
for
like
North
how we
Carolina.
define words. We don't define
Right.
words based upon what the law says. We don't use the law to tell us what grape is. We tell the
Right.
law what grape is, not
If
the
a
other way
little
around.
girl came to me and she told me that she was raped by another woman, her teacher, I would obviously A, report that, B, talk to her about that, and that would be a huge piece of trauma for her. I couldn't even imagine that. If in legally standing, if that teacher
We're
were
not
to
talking about
go,
legally standing. We're talking about what you think. How do you define grape?
what I define grape is a penis into a vagina, like forcefully or without
Okay. All right.
without consent.
So yeah, once again. So point number one, you don't think that women can grape each other, which is a very obvious reason why you should redefine grape. And point number two, I didn't want to go here because I think that this can be incredibly dark and triggering, but this needs to be said because this is a really good reason why we shouldn't define grape in the way that you're using the term. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to go here. I'm just gonna try to be as like PC as possible and talk about something that is incredibly dark, tormented, and wrong. But one of the most compelling reasons why we should define grape to include more things than just the penetration of the female member with a male member is because of the grape of incredibly small children. What we often see in circumstances of the grape of newborns, which is so sick and twisted, it is literally like hurting me to even talk about it, is not with the male member, but rather with fingers, because they can't even get the male member to fit. I
Well,
hate saying that.
we
I
could
hate saying
argue
that, but
we could
that is
argue
a
that
fact
too.
of reality.
Do
Okay,
I agree
and
that
that
the
is
definition should be
that is
changed?
what just that is one of the God. It's just so hard for me to even say that. Oh God,
I
I
think
hate saying that, but that
the
is just
definition
one
should be
of the
changed. You're
one
right.
of the
It could be
really many
tweaked.
reasons to not merely define grape as the penetration of a female member with a male member, but rather to include the penetration of the female member with any object.
Okay. We can. I think that the definition should be tweaked. I absolutely agree.
Okay.
I think on paper, legally standing, it is how it is,
So
and
now you agree that you define grape to include the penetration of the female member with any object, including fingers.
I think it could be changed.
We're not,
I
no, we're not talking about changing the legal definition. We're talking about how you define it.
I define it how the law is written, like written it. I mean, technically written, standing. You can't make up metaphorical things and then say, "Oh well, Trump was, this, so he must have been had done this," because we feel like that's the definition.
How
The
many how
definition of
many
it
how
is
many
how it is right
how
now.
many enslaved black people were raped during slavery? Because according to the way that you define rape, there was none. Because during the time there was not a single legal standard to suggest that unconsensual intercourse with enslaved individuals was rape.
Repeat that last part.
How many enslaved black people were raped during American slavery? Because according to your suggestion that we should just merely define it based upon the law, there was no enslaved individuals that were raped during American slavery, as there was not a
Uh,
single law at any point during American slavery to define rape to include the unconsensual intercourse with enslaved individuals.
that's you have a good point. I absolutely see where you're coming from with that, and you've changed my mind on it. And it honestly, if Trump did that, then he shouldn't own a gun. I think I saw somebody in the chat that he technically is not allowed to own a gun.
Right. And I just want to clarify.
So
I hope that I've changed your mind on this because we shouldn't say that we define words how the law define words. Because if we define words how the law defines the words, then the law will never change. Like imagine that we're leaving American slavery and everyone thought just like you that we only define grape how the law does. Then why would the law ever change to include other things as grape if it is self-actualizing as valid and accurate?
right,
Right?
right.
Because you're saying that it's a self defining standard of accuracy insofar as what grape is or isn't, meaning that it would never have to change as it is a self defining standard of accuracy. Obviously, that's not true. It's not a self defining standard of accuracy. So, what is the standard of accuracy? The way that the people think the word would best be used to define to an umbrella of actions, right? So, in other words, the defining standard of accuracy of what grape is or isn't the law, but it's rather us, right? And we engage in discord like this to determine what the best fit usage of the word would be. And if we come to a different conclusion than the law, the conclusion isn't that we're wrong and the law's right. It's rather that we're right and the law's wrong. Therefore, we need to change the law to be more benevolent and in better servants to the people.
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. I see where you're coming from on that. I still don't want the government taking any of my guns away.
Well,
I don't want the
just
government
listen. So now
telling
that you see
me.
where I'm coming from on that, now can we finally agree that the way we define grape would include the forceful, non-consensual penetration of the female member with any object, including a man's fingers?
I think the definition should be changed. Absolutely. Do
Can you just
I?
affirm or deny what I just said? Can we agree with that? Yes or no?
I don't know if there is a yes or no to that. Technically, legally on paper, it is not that. Do I think that you could redefine it as that? Yes. Do I think?
I'm muting you now for maybe 25 to 30 seconds while I read off donos and I just take a second to calm down because I just gave you such an accurate, nuanced description on why that statement is incorrect. You ignore it all and you go right back to the note cards. Honestly, you know what I'm doing? I'm considering hiring a writer, a transcriptor to sit on this live with me and every guest. So the moment a guest reverts back to what they were originally saying after I give them a long winded explanation on why they are wrong, I could just say, transcriptor, please go back to the transcript and repeat exactly what I said to explain how they're wrong and I've already proved it. I honestly think I might do that. I think that would be a good use of my funds. But once again, I'm just now going to repeat this, and I want you to sit on it while I think a couple donors. It'll take me, I just have a couple to think. The law doesn't tell us what we think. What we think tells the law what it should be. You cannot say, well, I understand where you're coming from, Dean, but technically the law disagrees. I'm asking you about how you feel and how you define grape. And I just gave you a great explanation on why you shouldn't define grape based upon what the law says or isn't says or doesn't say, because we shouldn't treat the law as a self-affirming standard of accuracy. Okay. Now let me thank a couple people. Opal, thank you so much for the $20 over on Super Chat. I really appreciate you for the love. Let's get 200 Opal W's down below. Opal with the $20 says, and people wonder why SA is so underreported. Dude, yeah, this lady's a social worker. That's so scary. It just scares the fuck out of me. Thank you for the $20 opal. That is incredibly kind of you. Let's get 200 opals once again. I really do appreciate you for that, as well as your message is incredibly accurate. As well as Brian, thank you so much for the $10 over on Venmo. Saying, still waiting for my shirt that says "Get pushed." Keep slamming the Maga bud. Love your work. Appreciate you for that. Love, Brian. Show some love to Brian down below. As well as Blake with the $5. Thank you so much for the love. Thank you so much for the love. Um, yeah, and I agree with your message there, Blake. As well as Jacob with the $10 saying, worst therapist ever. Appreciate you for the $10, Jacob. Catherine with the $5. Thank you so much. Ray with the $10 saying that RFK and the Trump admin are now going after abortion pills. Bro, they better not touch that shit, dude. I swear to God. Dude, they're just so, oh my God, they piss me off. As well as Maisie with the $7. Thank you so much. And Jack with the $5. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Garrett with the 5. Kazu with the 5. Jasmine with a 1. And Rosaria with the $15 on Venmo saying to keep up the good fight. Thank you so much. And Tori with the $20. Thank you so much, Tori. Tori says, trying to convince my parents to debate you. Dude, get him up here. I'd love to talk to him. As well as Lainey with a 10 and Tori with a 5. Thank you guys so much for all the love over on Venmo. I would also like to thank Gemma for the 50 cents. Thank you so much for the love. Then Dom, thank you for the $10 over on PayPal. Amanda with the 10 saying, love you so much, Gene. Thank you for speaking out about these things that are important. Thank you so much, Amanda. And then Mary, Mary, thank you so much for the $100 over on PayPal. I have a cut on my lip, so it literally hurts to smile. But Mary, thank you so much for the $100. Dude, that is ridiculous. That is so generous of you. Thank you so much. Let's get 1,000 Mary W's down below in the comment section. Fuck, now my mouth hurts because I smiled and the cut is stretching. Ow. Thank you so much, Mary. Let's get 1,000 Mary W's down below. That is seriously so kind and generous of you. Thank you so much a billion times over. As well as Hayes with the $15. Saying, as a social worker and a survivor of SA, I'm disheartened that a fellow social worker defines grape in a different way and is acting in this manner. Well, point number 1, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, Hayes. And point number 2, I absolutely understand why you're disheartened. I am too. As well as Sasha, thank you for the $10, saying please remind her that New York changed the law to include it. But also a man can't grape a man and a woman can't grape a woman. Just completely insane. As well as Elaine, thank you so much for the $50 donation over on PayPal. Thank you so much, Elaine. That is Eliane. Show some love to Elaine. Thank you. Elaine with the $50 says, I am non-binary and I appreciate you being very respectful and accurate with your language. Also low-key scared of Miss Therapist. Yeah, you shouldn't be scared of therapists. That's a reason why she shouldn't be a therapist, low-key. Thank you for the $50 and I appreciate you for being here. As well as Sebastian, thank you so much for the $20 on PayPal, saying thank you for doing what you do. Greetings from Germany. Love to Germany. Thank you for the $20. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone so much for their kindness. If you want to support me, support the stream, support what we do here, you could actually find my Venmo and my PayPal in the link tree in my bio. I get 100% of the proceeds over there. You could attach a message and I'll even read it off. Now, I'd also like to thank Elenia. Thank you so much for the $20 in Super Chat, saying, and I quote, the penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any body part or object or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without the consent of the victim, end quote, is the definition of grape per the Department of Justice. So actually, the guest is wrong. Go ahead.
Okay, so if the law has been changed since the last time that I've seen it, then absolutely, then go for it. That wasn't my main point of why I'm pro Second Amendment. I am not going to let you defame me of my job. I am an amazing therapist, and I've been doing it for many years. I love every single person that I meet, and I do everything that I can to help everybody that I'm with. So I'm just gonna put you right down there.
I didn't defame you. The legal definition
Okay.
of defame is not speaking negatively about somebody or their being. Rather, the legal definition of defame is to spew misinformation about an individual that leads to material
Right.
harm or impact on their income. And because you're all
Right.
about legal definitions, I would suggest that you uphold that standard in the context of your claim about me defaming you.
Yeah, no, literally what I did to come on here is to tell you that I support Trump because I'm pro Second Amendment, I'm pro life, and I believe that there's two genders. I mean, you wanted to go the whole grape route and
Can
everything
I tell you
else, and
why?
sure, that's the biggest thing that any Democrat has on Trump. It's the pretty much I mean, the top 10 of anything y'all have, and everything else following it really has no real context to it or real like anything to do with
Okay,
Like,
so
was
now that
modified.
you've like seemingly accepted that Donald Trump is a rapist, here's the conclusion. Earlier, we agreed that rapists are not mentally sane, meaning that rapists should not be able to own and buy firearms, meaning that you don't think Trump should be able to buy a gun, but he should have access to the nuclear codes. Isn't that like incredibly contradictory and hypocritical?
You know, I that's a really good question. My thing is I you know, if in that scenario, I will say this: you do have me there, Dean. In terms of that, let me ask you this: in terms of the nuclear weapons and stuff like that, is there not somebody that like is also overpowered than him? Like, is he just able to just go click that button however holly jolly he wants? And I
Yeah,
guess I am.
the nuclear football. Yes, yes. The president has the sole
Uh,
ability to launch
I,
nukes.
you're gonna have to let me go because I've got flagged.
I don't see anything on my end.
Yeah, I just got a thing for hate speech. Apparently, I don't know what I said.
Well, because it didn't show up on my end, you don't have to leave.
Okay, well, yeah, holly jolly with the. Did you wait? Sorry, I got the notification. So what did you say?
Yeah, I said it's incredibly insane and hypocritical to suggest that Donald Trump should be able to buy a gun, but he should have access to the nuclear codes. And yes, yeah, the president has a nuclear football, and the codes as they get to launch them. Additionally, something else I'd like to bring up is you said the biggest thing Democrats have on the president is that he's a literal rapist. That is a really big thing. That is a huge thing.
Okay, let me backtrack. Let me ask you this, Dean. Why would you support the Democratic Party for the Second Amendment if unless you don't believe in the Second Amendment?
No, so I am actually like not like super far left on guns. My position is I think that individuals that aren't going to do anything bad with a gun should be able to own them. I'm becoming like increasingly convinced of an AR ban, which may put me further to the left. I haven't been forever, but for the most part, I just support common sense gun reform. And I think that ultimately the reason why I support common sense gun reform, but still support gun ownership is for self protection, right? I think that marginalized communities in America should have access to firearms for self protection. I think that women in America should have access to firearms for self protection. And every time I see an awesome, intelligent feminist talking about how women should defend themselves and buy a gun for self protection, I'm like, hell yeah, that is totally feminism and I support it 110%. So that's why I'm like, I support the Second Amendment. I just also support like reducing the deaths of innocent children in school and common sense gun reform. And I don't think that I don't think that the Harris administration was going to infringe upon my rights as a gun owner. I am a gun owner. Kamala Harris said that she owned a Glock. She uses it for self protection. She didn't want to take that right away. And I don't think that my rights would have been jeopardized. And I don't think that your rights to own a gun would have been jeopardized either.
Okay, how do you stop school shootings from banning ARs?
Dude, um, I am not an expert policymaker on how we can stop school shootings. I think that we should do whatever it takes to stop innocent children from dying in schools, but I will not act as if I am a expert policymaker that knows exactly what that fix would be at the risk of accidentally spreading harmful misinformation.
Okay, then why are you pro banning of ARs or leaning towards it?
Because I've seen really good reason to indicate that it may reduce school shootings, that it may reduce gun deaths. Like for instance, one of the most compelling arguments that I heard had to do with the fact that places like the UK, they ban guns, they banned ARs, they have lower gun deaths per 100,000 residents, and we actually have higher levels of stabbings per 100,000 residents here, as well as Everytown Gun Research has done a lot of research on gun control in the last like 30 years in America, and what we know is that the more gun control a state has, the less gun deaths they have per 100,000 residents. But I would also like it to be known that like I don't understand how this relates to like Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. I think that Donald Trump is the only president in the last 8 years that has passed unconstitutional gun reform, and right now he is truly challenging 2A to the point where the NRA is publicly speaking out against him. And I don't think that Kamala Harris would have taken away your right to buy and own a gun.
Kamala Harris during her campaign was literally talking about mandatory buybacks. She scooted it back
No, she
and said,
didn't.
"Never mind."
That's something she talked about non-mandatory gun buybacks in 2019. That's not what she ran on in 2024. You're being so disingenuous.
She ran on what then? She ran on trying to get rid of assault rifles.
I don't even think that she ran on an AR ban. She did float the idea with Biden. And by the way, if that did pass, well, it would have had to be checked off by the 6-3 conservative Supreme Court. So if it was passed, signed into law, and stayed, well, then guess what? It was constitutional and it did not infringe upon your Second Amendment rights.
Okay, what did the left do? What did Biden do? What did Kamala do when they were in office to uh, stop gun violence?
I think literally the only thing that they did for gun control was to put a little bit more like criteria and classifications on ghost guns, and I don't think that they did enough, which is like a negative that I would name of the Biden-Harris administration. However, seemingly this would go against your argument of saying that she's a crazy communist that wants to take away all of your guns.
I don't know about specifically that. I just get nervous at the government in general doing that. I would be nervous if the Republican Party also started doing the same thing.
Do you care about the
Um,
Constitution?
Absolutely.
Then you shouldn't support Trump. I mean, this whole time we've been talking about the Constitution in 2A, so I think it's time we expand our conversation here. Little Sam721, I really appreciate you so much for the galaxy. Donald Trump does not care about the Constitution. He is an belligerently wannabe authoritarian that wants to make the rules, and he has a complete disregard for what the rules are as protected by the Constitution. In the last 8 months, he's infringed upon the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, he called for the termination of the 22nd Amendment, and he infringed upon the 14th Amendment. And if you care about the Constitution, you should never support him in a billion years for these reasons.
Okay. I'll definitely look that up. I'm not super informative on whatever else you're talking about with whatever laws he's coming out with.
Don't worry,
Um,
I'll drop a truth nuke on you. He's infringed on the First Amendment by 1A, signing an executive order attempting to ban the burning of the American flag. The Supreme Court ruled in the 80s that it is expressly protected under the First Amendment's right to freedom of speech and more so symbolic speech. He's infringed upon the First Amendment by B, saying that it is literally illegal to criticize him in the media, obviously calling for a termination of free speech in America. 3, by calling news agencies such as CNN and MSNBC illegal, infringing upon or more so calling for the termination to the right of press under the First Amendment, because now he's literally calling press agencies illegal. And 4, he's infringed upon the First Amendment by calling protest and boycott illegal, so infringing upon the right to protest under the First Amendment. He's infringed on the Second Amendment and basically just called for its termination by suggesting that no trans Americans should be able to buy and own guns. Even the far-right NRA says that that's unconstitutional. He's infringed on the 14th Amendment because on day one, he signed Executive Order number 14160 into law that attempt to take the birthright citizenship away from undocumented immigrants born on American soil. However, that has been expressly codified and protected in the American Constitution since 1865 when the 14th Amendment was signed into law, and since 1897 in the U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark case when the Chief Justice of SCOTUS at the time set out clear parameters for who has and doesn't have birthright citizenship. And guess what? Those parameters suggested with certainty that undocumented immigrants born on the soil do have it. And then he called for termination of the 22nd Amendment, which says that a president cannot serve for more than 2 terms, when he said that he might want to serve for a 3rd term, and there's many ways he could get it done.
okay. Damn, Dean. I will say this: you're good at what you do. And if he indeed did all of those things, then I absolutely don't agree with that. I do agree with withholding the Constitution. If he was talking about burning the flag as not your right, then yeah, that's kind of fucked up. I hadn't heard about that, but yeah,
Can we agree that that's just like more than enough reason to stop supporting him as president?
dude, you fucking got me. I will say that. Props to you.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to go over?
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you for listening.
Yeah, appreciate you for the conversation. You have a good one. That was a tough one. That was a tough conversation. Gizmo, thank you for the 10 pounds on Super Chat, saying that the UK has had one school shooting 30 years ago, and they changed the laws within a year. No school shootings since. Gun crime is incredibly rare. I'm an ED nurse, 10 years, and I've never seen a gun. Gare Bear, appreciate you for that Cloud9. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Gare Bear. Thank you so much. And yeah, like honestly, my position is like I like guns. You know, I think guns are cool. You know, like many other dudes do. Woo, guns are cool, right? That's me. But I'm okay with banning guns if it means saving the lives of children. And I'm surprised that's not the position of the right. I'm surprised. I'm so surprised by that. You know what I mean? They love to talk about how much they love children and want to protect them, keep them safe, and give them a good life. And when they say that, like, they like guns, you know, like, in a sense, I get it. You know, like, oh, shooting guns, cool. I mean, like, that's just how some families are brought up. People are raised around guns. They think that they're fun to shoot, whatnot. But, like, you're not willing to sacrifice a piece of metal that you think is cool to save the lives of kids? Like, that's where I get caught up at.